let's keep it locked and let's keep it ready, because I think that this card's looking really, really good with Rob Font and Cody Garbrandt headlining. I mean, across the board, I've been preaching about it before, but the UFC matchmaking right now is just phenomenal. And I'm going to use some stats, as I usually do, to kind of force how good it actually looks on paper, whether this is intentional or not. I mean, it's almost far too coincidental for it not to be intentional, but the matchups across the board this weekend are not only going to dictate where even the lowest of ranked fighters are going to go moving forward, but also where some of these guys kind of land in the top. I think that the flyweight division is about to get a lot of attention on this card, and obviously the bantamweight division, so much riding on that main event. So let's kind of jump right into it before we kind of give too much away, right? So, we were kicking off the card with Rafael Alves and Damir Ismagulov. So this fight, I honestly believe, could have been on the main card. Now, the reason I say that is Rafael Alves, he's come in through the Bantamweight Contender Series now. In that fight, I felt like even there he was forced to deal with some length in Flores, but man, he had no issues. He pushes the pace, very exciting, very fast. I mean, I think he's way too chiseled for 145, so it's going to be interesting to see what he does at 155 and see how easy that weight cut is for him. But he was a thick man in a good way for 145, but again, so powerful. The moment the fight was, taken to the ground, he locked up the guillotine and didn't look back. He's got really good chokes and he sinks them in tightly. That's the part that I think Damir Ismagulov, if it goes to the ground, needs to be very aware of. But, going quickly into him, I would say that the striking game looks phenomenal, right? I got to say that this is definitely one of the top prospects in the UFC, kicking off the card in a big way, in my opinion. And, the technical aspect of his game and his agility, I wouldn't call him fast. I think he's agile. I think he's able to use his footwork to set up his own strikes. I think he's very, a great counter striker. So when he's stepping side to side, you're seeing him land a lot of good jabs and a lot of good combos. That's the part that makes me excited to see him fight, because the one thing that's really impressive is that he seems to be able to go 3 to 5 rounds, no problem. I think that in terms of the evidence that we've seen in his previous fights, I really like the game plan. When you look at the Thiago Moises fight, I mean, he even rocked him a little early in that fight, and it got more even over the course of the fight. Thiago Moises was, considered to be a top 10 fighter and very much on his way to seeing top talent in the UFC. We saw the Bobby Green fight last year, but that's where I'm seeing like Damir Ismagulov having such a good, background already going into this fight with some of the guys he's taken on. And I think that the striking is going to be a big problem. If this fight doesn't go to the ground where Alves can be kind of more explosive or even on the feet, like I think Ismagulov's going to have the footwork. He's going to have the technical aspects of his striking game to kind of combat some of that forward pressure, some of that hulking style. We're so used to it. So many Brazilian fighters too just love that coming in and boxing. And I think that with Ismagulov, it's a tough matchup for Alves, because I think that Ismagulov really does pride himself in being able to hang back, being able to pick his shots, use the footwork. And I think that's where I really enjoyed his previous fights, because you can see that his 100% takedown defense in his 3 UFC fights is coming from using that footwork, being able to gauge the scrambles and use the sprawls. I mean, he's just so technical, and that's what makes it such a fun fight, because you've got technical, fighter with great striking versus an absolute, brawler, beast type, super speed, combos for days, very creative. That's the stuff that makes interesting fights, right? Because you're going to really have to stack up which guy you kind of lean. And right now, to be honest, Damir Ismagulov, for me, is just such a I think he's a huge prospect. It's just that with Alves, between weight problems and just the Dana White Contender Series thing, I feel like we just haven't seen him fight enough since that belt. But in this case, Damir Ismagulov is a huge name for him to take on right away. So I'm excited to see him get that fight under his belt and see how he stacks up, because for me, the technical game of Damir Ismagulov, the way he can attack all 3 levels, I think that's going to be a little tough for him, because from a competition perspective, I think this is the toughest fight of his career. We can quickly take a look and see if I made a mistake on that, but I don't think so at all. When you even look at some of the fights that Damir Ismagulov, Thiago Moises, Joel Alvarez, and Alex Verdes in his UFC career. So I think that you're seeing him take on increasing, level of skill, and this is a big fight for him. So right now, as usual, let's take a quick look at the lines. We're going to pull up the first line of the day, and right there, man, without question, I mean, is there another way to look at this? I think that you have a great example of the technical versus the brawler, and at minus 550 opening and now sitting at minus 550 to minus 600, we can obviously see where this one's going. Alves has that finishing ability, but I'm curious how that gas tank's going to look. If he can't get that finish in that first round, how is he going to look against the guy who's clearly proven that he can strike at his best for all 3 rounds and maintain 100% takedown defense in the process? That's going to be an interesting fight. I think if it gets up against the fence, let's see how good Damir Ismagulov is able to get out of there, avoid the clincher, because even if you get it up against the fence and you're staying there for too long, and he does enough to keep it there for an extended period of time, he's going to get the control time on that. So that's where, maybe Alves can pull off a bit of an upset, use some of that strength, use some of that forward pressure. That fearlessness can sometimes play into your hands if there's no knockout power coming the other way. So if he's not feeling any danger in the strikes coming at him, yeah, he might get pegged a little bit, but getting in there close, getting some good body locks, even if you can't take it to the ground where you push it up against the fence, just stay in close. I think the closer you can get to Damir, the better the fight chances, the better the chances are for you to win the fight. So without any question, if you're seeing him spend too much time on the outside, if you're a live bettor, by all means, start looking at that Damir fight if it's going down, because that's an interesting call. And I mean, in terms of over-unders, I don't really have a lean on any of that yet, but my slight lean on Damir being a good favorite for this fight makes a lot of sense. And I just think it's a lot of that technical skill. The tape really proves that he's a guy to keep an eye on in terms of just even ranked fighters. So this is the kind of fight where it's his to lose. And that's where, going back to what I was initially saying, but Alves, this is really a good fight for him to propel himself into the next tier. And seeing how well he was at 145, and even knowing that it's kind of a tough cut for him, this fight at 155 is going to be one to watch. So I can't wait for that.